April 17, 1945. Eastern France, 4 kilometers south of the Rhine crossing near Kiel. The barrel of the Browning M2 machine gun points west across the clearing. Dug in on a low ridge, 4 American soldiers watch the tree line below them through the morning haze. No wind. No movement. The air tastes like wet earth and oil. The gun crew has been in position since over 4:30 hours. They have not moved. Behind them, 50 meters back, an infantry platoon lies flat in the brush, rifles forward. No one speaks. Ahead, the forest edge is 600 meters away, well within effective range. The traverse has been set, the elevation adjusted twice already. The belt is loaded. The first round is chambered. At 06:12 hours, figures emerge from the trees. 20, then more. Walking slowly, not running. They are moving toward the ridge. The machine gunner shifts slightly, aligning the sights. His finger does not enter the trigger guard. Not yet. The signal has not come. The unit dug into the ridge is part of a provisional force assembled 3 days earlier from elements of the 36th Infantry Division. Their orders were simple: hold the eastern approach road until relieved, deny movement to any retreating elements, and report all activity to battalion headquarters located 4 kilometers northwest. The ridge overlooks a former logging road that runs north toward the Rhine. It is a natural choke point. Nothing moves through this terrain without being seen. The machine gun position was selected because it provides unobstructed fields of fire down into the valley floor. The crew consists of 4 men: the gunner, the assistant gunner, an ammunition bearer, and a runner. They have been rotated into this position twice before. All are experienced. The gunner is a corporal from Pennsylvania who has been with the division since Salerno. He does not speak much. He does not need to. The figures now visible in the clearing below are German soldiers. That much is obvious from their silhouettes and the way they move. Slow, irregular, not in formation. They are walking in scattered groups, some carrying weapons, others not. Their uniforms are visible even at this distance. There is no deception here. They are not concealed. They are simply moving. This is the kind of situation the crew has trained for. Retreating enemy forces, open ground, limited cover, maximum exposure. The doctrine is straightforward: engage, suppress, eliminate. The crew has rehearsed the procedure multiple times. Traverse left to right. Fire in bursts. Adjust for effect. The standard procedure does not require confirmation from higher command. If enemy forces present themselves as targets within range, you fire. But no signal has been sent down the line. The training manuals for the Browning M2 are specific. Rate of fire 450 to 600 rounds per minute. Effective range 1,800 meters. Maximum range 6,800 meters. Crew responsibilities are divided and rehearsed until they become reflex. The gunner controls the trigger, sets the aim, manages the traverse. The assistant feeds the belt, monitors the barrel temperature, calls out adjustments. The ammunition bearer ensures the belts are ready and untangled. The runner maintains communication with the platoon leader. The crew on the ridge has performed this function before. Twice in March, south of Saarbrücken. Once in early April near Heidelberg. In each instance, the procedure was the same: identify the target, assess the range, wait for the green light, or take the initiative if contact is immediate. There were no complications. Targets appeared. Guns opened. Targets stopped appearing. The situation below the ridge fits the parameters exactly. Enemy combatants. Open terrain. Clear sightlines. No civilians visible. No white flags. No surrender gestures. Just movement. The figures are walking in the same direction, toward the Rhine crossings that are now in Allied hands. They are not advancing. They are withdrawing. But they are armed. That is enough. The platoon leader is behind the ridge, lying prone with his radio operator. He has field glasses trained on the clearing. He has not given an order. The infantry squad leaders are spread along the ridge line, watching their sectors. No one is firing. No one is moving. They are waiting. This is unusual. In previous engagements, the call came quickly. The platoon leader would raise his hand, or the radio operator would relay the order, and the guns would open within seconds. Here nothing. The delay is noticeable. It is not explained. The expectation is clear. The guns will fire. They always do. The gunner's finger rests against the trigger guard. Not inside it. Against it. He watches the figures moving below. They are closer now. 500 meters. He can see individuals. One man is limping. Another has his arm in a sling. They are not running. They are walking. The assistant gunner glances at him, then back at the clearing, then at him again. No words. The runner looks toward the platoon leader. The platoon leader is still holding the field glasses. His head does not move. The figures keep walking. 400 meters now. The machine gun's muzzle tracks them slowly, almost automatically. The traverse mechanism is smooth. The motion is small, controlled. No one speaks. No one moves except to breathe. The gunner's jaw tightens. His eyes do not blink. His hand does not shift. Nothing happens. At 06 Western hours, the first group of German soldiers passes the 400-meter mark. The second group follows. They are spread out across the width of the clearing, maybe 60 meters between the farthest men. Some carry rifles slung over their shoulders. Others have nothing. One group stops briefly, and a man sits on the ground. He does not get up immediately. The infantry along the ridge begin to shift. Not much. A slight turn of the head. A glance toward the platoon leader. The tension is not visible in movement, but in the lack of it. No one scratches. No one adjusts position. They are frozen in place, waiting for something that has not come. The radio operator leans slightly toward the platoon leader and says something inaudible. The platoon leader does not respond. He lowers the field glasses for a moment, then raises them again. The machine gun crew does not look at each other. The gunner remains locked on the targets. The assistant gunner watches the belt feed. The ammunition bearer sits motionless with his hand on the spare can. The runner's eyes move between the clearing and the platoon leader, then back to the clearing. At 06:21 hours, more figures emerge from the tree line. These are slower. Some are being supported by others. One man is walking with a makeshift crutch. The groups do not converge. They remain scattered, each moving at its own pace. The distance closes. 350 meters. 300. Still no order. The squad leaders begin exchanging looks. Nothing overt, just brief glances. One of them shifts his weight slightly, as if preparing to move or speak. He does not. Time becomes elastic. Seconds stretch. The scene below unfolds in a kind of slow clarity. Every detail is visible. The way one soldier adjusts his cap, the way another wipes his face with his sleeve. They are not abstractions. They are men. The gunner's finger stays outside the trigger guard. The platoon leader's name was Lieutenant Edward Marsh. He was 31 years old. Before the war, he taught high school mathematics in Ohio. He had been with the 36th Division since North Africa. He had seen Monte Cassino. He had seen Anzio. He had seen the Vosges Mountains. He had given the order to fire many times before, but he was looking at something different now. Not tactically different, observationally different. The German soldiers in the clearing were not retreating under fire. They were not regrouping. They were not preparing a defensive position. They were walking. Some of them were injured. Some were unarmed. They were not moving toward Allied lines. They were moving parallel to them, toward the Rhine crossings that had already fallen. Marsh knew the war was ending. Everyone knew. The Rhine had been crossed 3 weeks earlier. German forces in the west were collapsing. Surrender was becoming more common than resistance. The briefings at battalion had shifted in tone. There was talk of occupation, of processing prisoners, of what came next. Marsh also knew the rules of engagement. Enemy combatants in the field were legitimate targets. Armed or not, retreating or advancing, the presence of a uniform made the decision clear. He could have given the order. No one would have questioned it, but he was looking at men who were no longer fighting. There was no formal doctrine for this, no field manual section titled, "When not to fire." The decision was his to make, and he made it without speaking. He simply did not give the signal. The machine gunner, Corporal Raymond Laska, had been watching Marsh through his peripheral vision. Laska had served under Marsh for 14 months. He understood the rhythm of his commands, the way he moved before issuing orders, and Laska had seen the targets clearly. He had also seen that they were not returning fire, not preparing to, not capable of it. Laska made his own assessment. He kept his finger off the trigger. No conference occurred. No discussion. The decision was made in silence, independently, by 2 men who reached the same conclusion without speaking. At 06:29 hours, the last of the German soldiers disappeared back into the tree line on the far side of the clearing. The entire column, approximately 60 to 70 men, had passed through the open ground in full view of the ridge, without a shot being fired. Lieutenant Marsh lowered his field glasses. He handed them to the radio operator and stood slowly, brushing dirt from his trousers. He said nothing. He walked back toward the platoon command post, a shallow trench 30 meters behind the ridge. Corporal Laska released his grip on the machine gun. He leaned back slightly, exhaling. His assistant gunner pulled the belt out of the feed tray and let it hang. The ammunition bearer closed the spare can. The runner stood and stretched his legs, then sat back down. Along the ridge, the infantry remained in position for another 10 minutes. Then, in small movements, they began to relax. One man rolled onto his side. Another took out a canteen. A sergeant walked the line quietly, checking positions, saying nothing of consequence. No one discussed what had just happened. There was no debrief, no questions from squad leaders, no clarification sought from Marsh. The event simply ended, and the unit resumed its posture. At 06:45 hours, Marsh reported to battalion by radio. The transmission was brief. He stated that enemy personnel had been observed moving southeast through the sector. He noted the approximate number. He reported no engagement, no contact. The radio operator on the other end acknowledged and signed off. There were no follow-up questions. The machine gun crew rotated off the ridge at 1100 hours and was replaced by another crew from a different squad. Laska and his team moved back to the company area, ate cold rations, and rested. By evening, they were assigned to a different position 2 kilometers north. The clearing below the ridge remained empty. There is no after-action report that describes the events of April 17, 1945, in detail. Battalion records for that week are sparse. The daily log notes: enemy movement observed, no engagement in a single line. No explanation follows, no inquiry was made. Lieutenant Marsh did not write about the incident in any letter that survives. His official service record contains no commendation, no reprimand, no annotation related to the event. Corporal Laska's records are similarly silent. None of the soldiers on the ridge that morning were interviewed after the war about what happened. Most never spoke of it. The few who did mentioned it only briefly, in passing, decades later, without emphasis. One described it as a day we didn't shoot. Another said, "We saw some Germans. They walked through." That was it. No historian has catalogued the event. It does not appear in divisional histories. It is not cited in studies of late war engagement patterns. The names of the German soldiers who walked across the clearing are unknown. Whether they reached their intended destination is unrecorded. Whether they survived the next week is uncertain. The gap in documentation is not unusual. Thousands of small decisions were made in the final weeks of the European war that left no formal record. Not every action, or non-action, was considered significant enough to document. In the closing chaos of the conflict, as units moved rapidly and communication networks strained, many events simply passed unremarked. The absence of a report does not mean the moment did not matter. It means it mattered quietly. Lieutenant Edward Marsh returned to Ohio in November 1945. He resumed teaching. He married in 1947. He did not speak publicly about his service. In the 1960s, a local newspaper interviewed him briefly about his wartime experience. He mentioned Italy and France. He did not mention the Ridge. Corporal Raymond Laska went back to Pennsylvania. He worked in a steel mill for 30 years. He attended veteran reunions occasionally, but did not seek them out. In 1978, a researcher compiling an oral history of the 36th Division asked him about late war operations in Germany. Laska recalled the Rhine crossing, the rapid advances, and the confusion as resistance collapsed. When asked if he had any particularly vivid memories, he paused and said, "There were a lot of times things didn't go the way you thought they would." Two other members of the machine gun crew, the assistant gunner and the ammunition bearer, lived into the 1980s. Neither left detailed accounts. The runner died in 1953 in a car accident. No correspondence from him mentioning the war has been located. The soldiers who crossed the clearing that morning, if they survived, returned to Germany. Some were processed as prisoners of war in the weeks that followed. Others may have reached the Rhine and crossed before the final collapse. Their names are not recorded in Allied reports. Their fates remain unknown. What is certain is that no violence occurred on that ridge. 70 men walked through open ground under the sights of a machine gun and continued walking. The clearing is still there. The ridge overlooks it as it did in 1945. The trees have grown taller. The logging road is overgrown. There is no marker, no plaque, no indication that anything happened here. The machine gun position has long since eroded. The trench is gone. The ground is uneven from decades of weather and neglect. No one visits this site. It is not included in battlefield tours. It is not on maps of the campaign. The signal that was delayed was never sent. The guns that could have opened fire stayed silent. The moment passed, unrecorded, unwitnessed except by those who were there. They are gone now. All of them. What remains is the space between intention and action, the distance between doctrine and discretion, the silence where violence could have been but was not. No explanation is needed. The facts stand alone. On April 17, 1945, a machine gun crew had a clear shot. They did not take it. That is all.